You planned everything. You destroyed me.
No, darling. You did that to yourself.
The smell of expensive flowers couldn't mask the stench of greed filling the funeral home. I watched my wife Elena dab her eyes with a silk handkerchief while calculating her inheritance in her head. Her father's casket gleamed like the corporate headquarters he'd built from nothing, and every mourner here knew they were witnessing more than a burial. They were watching a coronation. He would have wanted the company in capable hands, Elena whispered to the board members clustered around her like vultures at a carcass. I stood 10 feet away, invisible in my off-the-rack suit, watching these people who'd never given me the time of day suddenly treat my wife like royalty. What they didn't know, what Elena didn't know, was that I owned 71% of Blackstone Industries. Her dear old dad had sold it to me 3 years ago when the company nearly went bankrupt. We'd kept it quiet, let Elena think she was inheriting the family empire. Sometimes the best revenge is patience. "David, come meet the new CEO," Carmen Rodriguez called out, her voice dripping with fake warmth. Elena's best friend and corporate lawyer had never liked me, but today she was all smiles. Power does that to people, makes them forget their true feelings. I walked over, my work boots squeaking on the polished marble. "Congratulations, honey. Your father would be proud." Elena's smile was as cold as her father's corpse. "Thank you, darling. I know this transition will be challenging for everyone." The way she said everyone made my skin crawl, like I was some obstacle to be managed. "The board meeting is tomorrow," said Richard Henley, the company's longtime CFO. His nervous energy filled the space between us. "We'll make the succession official," I nodded, playing the supportive husband. "I'm sure you'll all make the right decisions." Carmen's laugh was sharp. "Oh, we will. The company needs fresh leadership, people who understand modern business." Translation, not me, never me. The funeral reception dragged on for another hour. I watched Elena work the room like a politician, making promises she couldn't keep, building alliances that would crumble once people learned the truth. Her lover, Damian Torres, hovered nearby in his $1,000 suit, whispering strategy in her ear when he thought no one was looking. But I was always looking. "Dad, this is so weird," our daughter Allie said, appearing at my elbow. At 22, she had Elena's sharp features, but thankfully not her cold heart. "Everyone's acting like Grandpa's death is some kind of business opportunity?" "Death brings out people's true nature," I said, watching Damian's hand brush Elena's lower back. "You learn who your real friends are." "Are you okay? You seem different." I was different. 3 weeks ago, I'd hired a private investigator named Jake Morrison, an ex-cop who specialized in corporate surveillance. What he'd found would make a soap opera writer blush. Elena wasn't just cheating, she was planning to destroy me. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just tired." The next morning, I sat in my home office reviewing Jake's latest report. Photos of Elena and Damian at the Ritz-Carlton. Bank records showing mysterious transfers. Text messages that would make a sailor cringe. But the real gold mine was the recording Jake had made of Elena and Carmen, planning my downfall. "David's always been dead weight." Elena's voice crackled through my computer speakers. "Once I'm CEO, we'll find a reason to fire him. Make it look legitimate." "What about his shares?" Carmen asked. "He only owns 3%. Daddy made sure of that." "Wrong, sweetheart. So very wrong." My phone buzzed. A text from Elena. "Board meeting moved to 10 a.m. Don't be late, E." I smiled. Punctuality had never been my problem. The Blackstone Industries boardroom occupied the entire 42nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of downtown. I'd helped design this room back when Elena and I were actually partners, when she still pretended to value my opinion. The board members filed in like pallbearers. Richard Henley, nervous as always. Margaret Stone, the ice queen of human resources. Tom Bradley, who'd suck up for a nickel. Patricia Walsh, who'd been sleeping with Elena's father for years. And 3 others whose names I'd forgotten because they never mattered. Elena entered last, flanked by Carmen and Damian like some corporate royalty. She'd chosen a black power suit that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Gentlemen, ladies," she began, taking her father's chair at the head of the table. "Thank you for coming during this difficult time. As you know, my father's will was very clear about the succession plan." I sat quietly in the corner, the grieving son-in-law who'd married above his station. Let them have their moment. "The board unanimously agrees that Elena Blackstone Morrison should assume the role of Chief Executive Officer," Richard announced, reading from a prepared statement. "All in favor?" 7 hands shot up. Mine stayed folded in my lap. "Excellent. Elena said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Now, for our first order of business, the company needs to streamline operations, eliminate redundancies, focus on core competencies. Corporate speak for fire people I don't like. We've identified several positions that are no longer necessary, Carmen said, sliding a folder across the table. Starting with the director of operations. My title, my job, the position I'd held for 8 years while Elena played at being Daddy's little princess. I'm sorry, David, Elena said, not sounding sorry at all. Your services are no longer required. Security will escort you out. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. Margaret Stone shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Tom Bradley studied his fingernails. Even Richard looked embarrassed. I stood slowly, straightening my tie. Well, this is awkward. Security is waiting outside, Damien said, speaking for the first time. His voice carried a slight accent that Elena probably found exotic. Please, don't make this difficult. Oh, I wouldn't dream of making things difficult. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick manila envelope. Before I go, there's something you should all know. Elena's confidence flickered for just a moment. David, please don't make a scene. A scene? I laughed, the sound echoing off the glass walls. Elena, sweetheart, you haven't seen anything yet. I opened the envelope and scattered documents across the polished conference table. Stock certificates, transfer agreements, legal documents bearing Elena's father's signature. What is this? Carmen demanded, but I could see the color draining from her face as she read the top page. This, I said, savoring every word, is proof that I own 71% of Blackstone Industries. Your dear departed father sold it to me 3 years ago when the company was hemorrhaging money. We kept it quiet because he was embarrassed. Didn't want people to know his son-in-law had to bail him out. Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's impossible! Daddy would never... Never what? Never sell the company to save it? Never trust the man who'd been keeping it afloat for years while you played house? I picked up one of the documents and held it out to her. His signature's right there, sweetheart, notarized and everything. Richard grabbed the papers with shaking hands, his face growing paler by the second. These appear to be legitimate. They are legitimate, I said. Which means this little coup you've orchestrated is actually illegal. You can't fire the majority owner, Elena. That's not how corporations work. Carmen shot to her feet. This is fraud. Those documents are forged. Feel free to have them authenticated. I'll wait. I settled back into my chair, suddenly feeling very comfortable. In fact, let's call the SEC while we're at it. I'm sure they'd love to hear about the creative accounting you've been doing, Margaret. And Tom, those kickbacks from the Henderson contract? Very creative. Tom's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. I pulled out my phone and played a recording Jake had made. Tom's voice filled the room, clear as day, discussing how to hide the payments. You've been spying on us? Elena's voice cracked with rage and fear. I've been protecting my investment. Did you really think I wouldn't notice when my wife started embezzling money to fund her boyfriend's lifestyle? I nodded toward Damien, who looked like he wanted to disappear. Nice Porsche, by the way. The one Elena bought you with company funds. The room erupted in chaos, board members shouting over each other, Elena screaming about invasion of privacy, Carmen threatening lawsuits that would never materialize. I sat in the center of it all, calm as a lake before a storm. Enough! I roared, and the room fell silent. Here's how this is going to work. You're all fired, every single one of you. Security will escort you out, and if any of you try to take so much as a paperclip, I'll have you arrested for theft. You can't do this, Elena whispered, but the fight had gone out of her voice. I can, and I am. I stood and walked to the head of the table to her father's chair. My chair now. Oh, and Elena? I'm filing for divorce. And Damien? If I see you within 100 yards of this building, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. Carmen tried one last desperate play. The shareholders will never stand for this. We'll call an emergency meeting. With what shares? Between the three of you, you own maybe 5% of the company. I own 71%. The math isn't complicated even for a lawyer. Security appeared in the doorway. My security now, men I'd hired that morning. Elena looked around the table desperately, but her allies were already gathering their things. Rats abandoning a sinking ship. This isn't over, she hissed as the security guards approached. Oh, sweetheart, I said, settling into the CEO's chair. It's just getting started. 3 hours later, I sat alone in the boardroom. watching the city spread out below me. My phone buzzed constantly. Reporters, lawyers, business partners, all wanting to know what the heck had happened at Blackstone Industries. Word traveled fast in corporate circles. Jake Morrison knocked on the door frame. How'd it go? Better than expected. They folded like cheap suits. I gestured to the chair across from me. What else do you have for me? Jake opened his tablet and scrolled through files. Elena's been busy. She's got accounts in 3 different banks, all funded with company money. Damien's got a gambling problem, owes about $200,000 to some very unfriendly people. And Carmen, she's been skimming from her law firm's client accounts. Interesting. What about the board members? Margaret's been selling employee information to headhunters. Tom's got those kickbacks we already know about. Richard's clean mostly, just scared. The others are small-time stuff, but enough to keep them quiet. I leaned back in the leather chair, feeling its weight and authority. And the press? They're calling it the Blackstone coup. Stock price is up 12% since the news broke. Investors love a good corporate drama, especially when it ends with competent leadership. My phone rang. Elena's number. Hello, sweetheart. You bastard. Her voice was thick with tears and rage. You planned this whole thing. I planned to save our marriage. You planned to destroy it. I swiveled the chair to face the window. How's the job search going? No one will hire me. They all think I'm a thief. Aren't you? Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, she spoke again. What do you want, David? I want you to disappear. Take your boyfriend and your lawyer friend and find somewhere else to play your games. Stay away from my company. Stay away from my daughter, and maybe I won't press charges. You're enjoying this. More than I should, I admitted. You know what the funny part is? I would have given you anything. The company, the money, my life. All you had to do was not betray me. I never loved you. I know, that's what makes this so easy. I hung up and turned back to Jake. What's next? Carmen's trying to rally the old board members, convince them to challenge your ownership in court. She's desperate. Let her try. Those documents are ironclad. I stood and walked to the window, looking down at the city that would soon know my name for all the right reasons. What about Damien? He's at the Marriott downtown, checked in this morning, paid cash. Looks like he's planning to skip town. Interesting. Think he'd be willing to talk? Jake grinned. For the right price, everyone talks. That evening, I sat in the hotel bar nursing a whiskey and waiting. Damien appeared at 9:30, looking like a man who'd lost everything. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his confidence shattered. He spotted me immediately and started to turn away, but I raised my glass in a mock toast. Damien, come join me. First round's on me. He hesitated, then walked over with the resigned air of a man facing execution. What do you want, David? To talk, man to man. I gestured to the empty chair. Sit. He sat, his eyes darting around the bar like a trapped animal. If you're here to gloat, I'm here to make you an offer. I signaled the bartender for another round. You're in trouble. Elena's frozen you out, Carmen's using you as a scapegoat, and those gambling debts aren't going to pay themselves. What kind of offer? The kind that keeps you breathing. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. I know about the Torino brothers. I know what happens to people who owe them money. Damien's face went white. How could you possibly? I know lots of things. For instance, I know Elena promised you a VP position once I was out of the picture. I know she's been funding your lifestyle with embezzled money, and I know you've got recordings of her planning all this. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo Jake had taken, Damien meeting with one of the Torino brothers outside a downtown restaurant. Nice company you keep. Damien stared at the photo, his hands shaking slightly. What do you want? Everything. Every recording, every document, every dirty secret Elena shared with you. In exchange, I'll pay off your gambling debts and give you enough money to start over somewhere far from here. And if I refuse, then you can explain to the Torino brothers why you can't pay them back. I hear they're very understanding about financial difficulties. Damien was quiet for a long moment, staring into his drink. Finally, he looked up. How much? 300,000. Enough to pay your debts and disappear. And all I have to do is betray Elena? Elena betrayed you the moment she got caught. You think she's going to protect you when the FBI starts investigating the embezzlement? I finished my whiskey and stood. You've got 24 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires. The next morning, Damien called. He had everything: recordings, financial documents, even love letters Elena had written detailing her plans to destroy me. Jake picked up the evidence while I transferred the money to an offshore account. Elena's downfall was swift and brutal. The recordings made their way to every major news outlet in the city. Her voice cold and calculating, discussing how to frame me for embezzlement while she looted the company. The financial documents showed a pattern of theft going back 2 years. The love letters revealed a woman so consumed with greed and ambition that she'd destroy anyone who stood in her way. Carmen tried to distance herself, claiming she'd been manipulated, but Jake's investigation had uncovered her own crimes. The State Bar Association opened an investigation into her client account irregularities. Her law firm fired her within hours of the story breaking. I sat in my office, the CEO's office now, watching the news coverage on 3 different screens. Elena's face filled each monitor as reporters dissected her fall from grace. The woman who'd been crowned corporate royalty just days ago was now a national symbol of corruption and betrayal. "Enjoying the show?" Jake asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "It's better than cable." I muted the televisions and turned to face him. "What's the latest?" "Elena's holed up in the lake house, won't take calls from anyone. Carmen's hired a criminal defense attorney. The board members are all cooperating with the investigation, hoping for immunity deals." "And Damien?" "Long gone. Last seen boarding a flight to Costa Rica." I nodded, satisfied. "What about Allie?" "Your daughter's been trying to reach you. She's confused about everything that's happened." That was the one part of this mess I regretted. Allie didn't deserve to have her family implode so publicly, but she needed to know the truth about her mother. "Send her up." Allie appeared 10 minutes later, looking like she'd aged years in the past week. Her eyes were red from crying, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. "Dad, what's going on? The news is saying Mom stole money, that she was having an affair." She collapsed into the chair Jake had vacated. "Please tell me it's not true." I came around the desk and knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's all true." "But why? We have money. We have everything. Why would she do this?" "Because some people are never satisfied. They always want more, always think they deserve better." I squeezed her hands gently. "Your mother lost sight of what was important. She chose ambition over family." "Are you getting divorced?" "Yes." "Where will I live?" "Wherever you want. You're 22, old enough to make your own decisions, but you'll always have a place with me." Allie broke down then, sobbing against my shoulder like she had when she was little, and the world seemed too big and scary. I held her while she cried, feeling my own heart break for the innocence she'd lost. "I'm sorry this happened," I whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "Did you really plan all this?" I pulled back to look at her, seeing Elena's features mixed with my own stubborn chin. "I planned to protect what we built. I never wanted it to go this far. But you're not sorry it did." "Smart girl." "Too smart, maybe." "No," I admitted. "I'm not sorry." 2 weeks later, I stood before the bathroom mirror in my penthouse apartment, adjusting my tie for the press conference that would officially announce my permanent appointment as CEO of Blackstone Industries. The board, a new board composed of people I actually trusted, had voted unanimously to confirm my leadership. The company's stock price had reached an all-time high. 3 major clients had renewed their contracts, citing confidence in the new management. 2 competitors had approached us about potential mergers. In the space of a month, I'd gone from corporate nobody to industry powerhouse. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You destroyed my life. Elena." She'd been sending similar messages for days, alternating between threats and pleas for forgiveness. I deleted this one like all the others. Another text, this one from Jake. "Carmen arrested this morning. Embezzlement charges. Thought you'd want to know." I smiled at my reflection, the last piece falling into place. The press conference was held in the same boardroom where Elena had tried to fire me. Reporters packed the space, their cameras and microphones pointed at the podium I'd had installed at the head of the table. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, looking out at the sea of faces, "thank you for coming. 3 weeks ago, Blackstone Industries faced a crisis of leadership. Today, I'm proud to announce that crisis is over." The questions came fast and hard. How long had I known about the embezzlement? Why hadn't I acted sooner? What were my plans for the company's future? I answered them all with the calm confidence of a man who'd won a war he never wanted to fight. Yes, I'd suspected financial irregularities. No, I'd never imagined the scope of the betrayal. Yes, I was committed to rebuilding trust with employees and shareholders. "Mr. Morrison?" called out Sarah Chen from the Business Journal. "Some people are calling this a hostile takeover disguised as a fraud investigation. How do you respond to those allegations?" "I'd respond by pointing out that you can't take over a company you already own," I said, drawing chuckles from the crowd. "I saved Blackstone Industries 3 years ago when it was facing bankruptcy. I continued to save it by exposing the corruption that threatened to destroy everything we'd built. If that's hostile, then I suppose I'm guilty as charged." "What about your wife? Will she face criminal charges?" The room fell silent, waiting for my response. I thought about Elena, probably watching this press conference from the lake house, seeing her life's work crumble while mine reached new heights. That's a matter for law enforcement to decide. My focus is on the future of this company and the thousands of people who depend on it for their livelihoods. After the press conference, I retreated to my office to find a visitor waiting. Richard Henley sat in one of the leather chairs, looking older than his 65 years. "Richard, I wasn't expecting you." "I wanted to apologize," he said without preamble, "for going along with Elena's plan, for not speaking up when I should have. You deserved better from me." I poured 2 glasses of bourbon from the bar cart and handed him one. "You were scared, I understand that." "I was a coward." He took a sip and grimaced. "Elena threatened to expose some personal indiscretions if I didn't vote to fire you. I should have called her bluff." "What kind of indiscretions?" "An affair 20 years ago, after my wife died. Elena somehow found out about it, threatened to tell my children." He looked up at me with haunted eyes. "My kids think their mother was the only woman I ever loved. I couldn't bear to shatter that illusion." I sat across from him, understanding more about Elena's methods than I'd wanted to. She had something on everyone, didn't she? Everyone except you. That's what frustrated her the most. She could never find your weakness. "She was my weakness," I admitted. "For 15 years, I would have done anything for her, given her anything she wanted. And now? Now I know better." Richard finished his bourbon and stood. "For what it's worth, your father-in-law would be proud. He always said you were the only one who really understood the business." After he left, I sat alone in the gathering darkness, city lights twinkling below like earthbound stars. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Elena, but I didn't call back. What was left to say? The next morning brought news that Elena had been arrested at the lake house. The FBI had finally moved, armed with evidence that painted a clear picture of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. She was denied bail, deemed a flight risk after investigators found she'd been moving money to offshore accounts. I felt nothing watching her perp walk on the news. No satisfaction, no vindication, just emptiness where my love for her used to live. Allie called that afternoon. "Dad, I saw the news about Mom." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Are you? Really?" I considered lying, giving her the comfort she needed. But she deserved honesty. "I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry you have to see your mother this way. But I'm not sorry she's facing consequences for what she did." "I visited her yesterday, before the arrest. That surprised me. How is she?" "Broken. She kept saying it wasn't supposed to happen like this, that you were supposed to just disappear quietly." Allie's voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. "She asked me to talk to you, to convince you to drop the charges." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her it was too late for that she made her choices." A pause. "Was that wrong?" "No, sweetheart, that was exactly right." 3 months later, Elena pled guilty to 12 counts of embezzlement and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Carmen received 6 years for her role in the scheme. The board members who'd cooperated received probation and community service. I didn't attend any of the hearings. There was no point in watching the final act of a tragedy I'd helped write. Blackstone Industries thrived under my leadership. We landed 3 major contracts in the first quarter, expanded into 2 new markets, and increased our workforce by 15%. Industry magazines wrote glowing profiles about the company's remarkable turnaround. I was invited to speak at conferences, to share the story of how we'd overcome internal corruption to emerge stronger than ever. But late at night, alone in my penthouse, I sometimes wondered if I'd become the villain in someone else's story. Elena had betrayed me, but I'd orchestrated her complete destruction with surgical precision. I'd turned her friends against her, exposed her secrets, and watched her world crumble without lifting a finger to help. Was justice supposed to feel this hollow? My phone rang, interrupting my brooding. Jake Morrison's name appeared on the screen. "What's up, Jake?" "Thought you'd want to know. Damian Torres was found dead in Costa Rica yesterday. Apparent self-inflicted death." I set down my whiskey glass, suddenly feeling very tired. "How?" "Pills. Left a note apologizing for everything. Said he couldn't live with the guilt." Jake paused. "There's more. He sent a package to Elena's lawyer before he died. More recordings, documents we never saw. Stuff that makes her look even worse. Does it matter now? She's already in prison. Might affect her appeal. Could add years to her sentence." I walked to the window, looking out at the city that had made me rich and cost me everything that mattered. "Let it go, Jake. We're done with all that." "You sure? This could bury her completely." "She's already buried. We all are." I hung up and poured another drink, thinking about the man I'd been before all this started. That David Morrison had been naive, trusting, content with his small piece of a larger pie. This David Morrison owned the whole bakery, but had lost his appetite. A year later, I stood in the same boardroom where it all began, addressing a room full of shareholders at our annual meeting. Blackstone Industries had just posted record profits. Our stock price had tripled. We'd acquired 2 smaller competitors and opened offices in 3 new cities. "Ladies and gentlemen," I concluded my presentation, "this has been a year of unprecedented growth and success. We've proven that integrity and hard work still matter in American business. We've shown that a company can overcome any challenge when its leadership is committed to doing the right thing." The applause was thunderous. Board members beamed. Shareholders counted their returns. Everyone was happy with the story we'd written together. After the meeting, I retreated to my office to find Allie waiting with a young man I didn't recognize. She'd graduated college the previous month and started working for a nonprofit in Seattle. The distance between us had grown, not from anger, but from the simple fact that she reminded me too much of her mother. "Dad, I'd like you to meet Marcus, my fiancé." The young man stepped forward with a nervous smile, extending his hand. "Mr. Morrison, it's an honor to meet you. Allie's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, studying his face. Honest eyes, firm grip, genuine smile. Nothing like the polished predators who'd circulated around Elena. "Congratulations! When's the wedding?" "Next spring," Allie said, her eyes bright with happiness I hadn't seen since before everything fell apart. "We wanted to ask, would you walk me down the aisle?" The question hit me harder than I'd expected. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This beautiful, brilliant woman was still my daughter despite everything that had happened. She still wanted me in her life. "It would be my honor," I managed finally. After they left, I sat alone in my office as the sun set over the city. My empire stretched out below me, buildings full of employees who depended on me, clients who trusted me, competitors who feared me. I'd won everything I'd thought I wanted, so why did it feel like losing? My computer chimed with an email notification. The sender's name made my blood freeze. Elena Morrison, Federal Correctional Institution, Dublin. I stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. "David, I know you probably won't read this, but I had to try. I've had 3 years to think about what I did, what we did to each other. I know you'll never forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. I'm not even asking you to write back. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away, what I destroyed with my greed and stupidity. You were a good man who loved me, and I repaid that love with betrayal. There's no excuse for that, no justification. I heard about Allie's engagement. She sent me a photo. She looks so happy, so beautiful. You raised an amazing daughter, David. Whatever mistakes I made, we got that right. I also heard about the company. Record profits, expansion, all the success you always said was possible. You were right about everything, and I was too proud and stupid to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For all of it. For the affair, the embezzlement, the lies, the way I tried to destroy you. You didn't deserve any of that. I hope you're happy, David. I hope you found peace. Elena. I read the email 3 times before deleting it. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some bridges burn so completely that not even ashes remain. But as I sat in my empty office, surrounded by the monuments to my victory, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. I'd become exactly what Elena accused me of being in those final, desperate phone calls. I'd become a man who could destroy someone completely and feel nothing at all. The wedding was beautiful. Allie walked down the aisle in her grandmother's dress, radiant with joy and hope. I gave her away to a young man who looked at her the way I'd once looked at Elena, like she was the center of his universe. At the reception, I danced with my daughter to the same song Elena and I had chosen for our wedding 25 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Are you happy, Dad?" Allie asked as we swayed to the music. "I'm proud of you. That's enough." "That's not what I asked." Smart girl. Too smart. "Happiness is overrated, sweetheart. Success is more reliable." "Is it? You have everything you ever wanted, but you look what? Lonely." The song ended, and I kissed her forehead. "Enjoy your wedding night, Mrs. Patterson. Don't worry about your old man." But as I drove home alone to my empty penthouse, I couldn't shake her words. Lonely. Yes, that was exactly what I was. I'd won the war, but lost everything worth fighting for. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake Morrison. "Saw the wedding photos in the society pages. Beautiful ceremony. How are you holding up?" I typed back, "Fine. Thanks for asking." But I wasn't fine. I was the king of an empire built on the ashes of my marriage, surrounded by people who feared me more than they respected me, successful beyond my wildest dreams and emptier than I'd ever imagined possible. The elevator to my penthouse seemed to take forever. When the doors finally opened, I was surprised to find someone waiting in my living room. Carmen Rodriguez sat in my leather armchair, looking older and harder than when I'd last seen her at Elena's sentencing. She'd been released 6 months ago, her law license permanently revoked, her reputation destroyed. "Hello, David." I didn't reach for the phone or call security. Somehow I'd been expecting this moment for years. "Carmen, how did you get in here?" "I still have friends in low places." She gestured to the couch across from her. "Sit, we need to talk." "I don't think we do." "Oh, but we do. You see, I've spent the last 3 years in federal prison thinking about you, about how perfectly you played us all, how completely you destroyed us." Her smile was sharp as a blade. "And I figured out your secret." I remained standing, every instinct screaming danger. "What secret?" "You didn't just own 71% of Blackstone Industries. You orchestrated Elena's affair with Damien. You manipulated her into trying to fire you, knowing it would give you the excuse you needed to destroy her completely." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. I kept my expression neutral, but inside my heart was racing. That's quite a theory. It's more than a theory. Damien didn't take his own life in Costa Rica. Someone ended it for him. And before that happened, he spoke to some very interesting people about a conversation he'd had with you 2 years before the affair, a conversation where you encouraged him to get closer to your wife. I sat down slowly, my mind racing through possibilities and contingencies. "Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, you have no proof." "Don't I?" Carmen reached into her purse and pulled out a digital recorder. "Damien was paranoid about everyone, David, including you. He recorded that conversation." She pressed play and my voice filled the room, younger and more naive than I remembered. "Elena's always been attracted to power, to men who can match her ambition. Someone like you could probably turn her head if you tried." Damien's voice responded, "Are you asking me to seduce your wife? I'm asking you to be yourself, charming, successful, available. What happens after that is up to her." Carmen stopped the recording. "Quite the long game, David. Plant the seeds, water them with opportunity, then act surprised when they bloom." I stared at the recorder, remembering that night 3 years ago when I'd first suspected Elena of planning to force me out. I'd been drunk, angry, looking for any advantage I could find. The conversation with Damien had been spontaneous, born of rage and bourbon. But Carmen was right about one thing. I'd known exactly what I was doing. "What do you want?" I asked finally. "Justice. The real kind, not the corporate-friendly version you've been selling." Carmen leaned forward, her eyes burning with years of suppressed fury. "You destroyed 3 lives to protect your precious company. Elena, Damien, and me. We all deserved punishment, but not the kind of orchestrated destruction you visited on us. Elena betrayed me. You helped her. Damien was a willing participant. Elena betrayed you because you manipulated her into it. You planted Damien in her path like a landmine, then acted shocked when she stepped on it." Carmen's voice rose, years of prison rage boiling over. "You're not a victim, David. You're a puppet master who got tired of his marionettes. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Prove it. I don't have to prove it. I just have to play this recording for the right people. Your daughter, for instance, or the business press, or the FBI agents who handled Elena's case. Carmen's reflection appeared beside mine in the glass. How do you think they'll react when they learn the truth? They'll think you're a bitter ex-convict trying to drag down a successful businessman. Maybe. Or maybe they'll start asking questions about your other business dealings. Amazing what investigators can find when they know where to look. I turned to face her, and for the first time in years, I felt genuinely afraid, not of losing money or status, but of losing the one thing I still cared about, Allie's respect. What do you want? I repeated. I want you to confess, publicly. Tell the world what you really did, how you manipulated all of us into destroying ourselves for your entertainment. That's not going to happen. Then I'll do it for you. Carmen stood, smoothing down her cheap dress. I'll hold a press conference tomorrow morning. Play the recording, tell the whole story. Let the world decide who the real villain is. After she left, I sat in my leather chair, the same chair she'd occupied, and stared at the city that had made me rich and powerful and utterly alone. The recording changed everything and nothing. Yes, I'd planted the idea in Damien's head, but Elena had chosen to act on it. Yes, I'd manipulated the situation, but they'd all made their own decisions, hadn't they? I poured a drink and called Jake Morrison. I need you to find Carmen Rodriguez tonight. What's she done now? She's about to destroy everything we built. Jake was quiet for a moment. David, maybe it's time to let sleeping dogs lie. You won. Elena's in prison, Carmen's a broken woman, the company's thriving. Why risk it all now? Because she's right, I said, the words tasting like ashes. I did manipulate them. I orchestrated the whole thing, and now it's coming back to haunt me. So what do you want me to do? I thought about Allie, about the way she looked at me during our wedding dance, about Elena, rotting in federal prison for crimes I'd helped engineer, about Damien, dead in a foreign country because he couldn't live with the guilt I'd helped create. Nothing, I said finally. Don't do anything. I hung up and walked to my safe, pulling out a bottle of 25-year-old scotch I'd been saving for a special occasion. This seemed special enough, the night before my empire crumbled. The press conference was held in the same hotel where I'd made my deal with Damien 4 years earlier. Carmen had cleaned up for the occasion, wearing a dark suit that made her look almost respectable. The room was packed with reporters, cameras, and curious onlookers drawn by the promise of scandal. I watched from the back of the room as Carmen told her story, the manipulation, the recording, the careful orchestration of Elena's downfall. She played Damien's recording twice, my voice echoing through the room like a confession. Ladies and gentlemen, Carmen concluded, David Morrison is not the business hero you've been told he is. He's a man who destroyed his own wife's life for profit and power. He manipulated all of us into betraying each other, then sat back and watched us burn. The questions came fast and brutal. How long had she known? Why wait until now to come forward? What did she hope to accomplish? Carmen answered them all with the calm precision of a woman who had nothing left to lose. She'd already lost everything, her career, her freedom, her reputation. This was just the final act of a tragedy that had started with my drunken suggestion to Damien. I slipped out before the conference ended, knowing my phone would be ringing within minutes. I was right. By the time I reached my office, I had 37 missed calls and counting. The board convened an emergency meeting that afternoon. The same boardroom, the same leather chairs, but the atmosphere was completely different. These people who'd once feared and respected me now looked at me with disgust and disappointment. Is it true? Asked Patricia Walsh, the newest board member. Did you manipulate your wife into having an affair? I looked around the table at faces I'd thought I could trust. Does it matter? Elena still embezzled money. She still tried to fire me illegally. She still betrayed our marriage vows. That's not an answer, said Michael Chen, our head of legal affairs. Did you or did you not plant the idea of an affair in Damien Torres's head? The room fell silent, waiting for my response. I could lie, deny everything, claim Carmen was fabricating evidence. But I was tired of lying, tired of carrying the weight of what I'd done. Yes, I said simply. I did. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Board members exchanged glances, some shocked, others nodding as if they'd suspected all along. Jesus Christ, David? whispered Thomas Bradley. Why? Because I knew she was planning to destroy me. I could see it in her eyes, hear it in her voice when she talked about the company's future. She wanted me gone, and I decided to give her enough rope to hang herself. So you destroyed your own marriage for revenge? I destroyed my marriage to save my company. Elena would have run Blackstone into the ground within 2 years. She was incompetent, corrupt, and surrounded by sycophants who told her what she wanted to hear. I stood, straightening my tie. I saved this company and 3,000 jobs. If that makes me a villain, so be it. The vote was unanimous. I was removed as CEO effective immediately. My shares placed in trust pending a full investigation. Security escorted me from the building I'd called home for 15 years. The media frenzy lasted for weeks. Every detail of my manipulation was dissected and analyzed. Business schools used my story as a case study in corporate psychology. Psychologists debated whether I was a brilliant strategist or a sociopathic manipulator. Elena was granted a new trial based on the revelation that she'd been manipulated into her crimes. Her sentence was reduced to time served, and she was released after 4 years in federal prison. She gave one interview to a national magazine where she called me the most dangerous man I've ever known. He didn't just destroy my life, she said in the article. He made me complicit in my own destruction. He turned me into someone I didn't recognize, then punished me for becoming that person. Allie stopped speaking to me after the truth came out. She returned my wedding gift, a check for $50,000, with a note that simply said, I can't have tainted money in my new life. I tried calling, texting, showing up at her apartment in Seattle. She wouldn't see me, wouldn't take my calls, wouldn't acknowledge my existence. I'd gained the whole world and lost the only person who mattered. Carmen Rodriguez wrote a book about the experience. The Puppet Master, How My Boss Destroyed Us All, became a bestseller, spawning a documentary and a made-for-TV movie. She donated the proceeds to a charity for white-collar crime victims. I never read the book, but I heard about the ending. Carmen concluded that I was neither hero nor villain, but something more dangerous, a man who'd convinced himself that his ends justified any means. She was probably right. 5 years after my downfall, I sat in a small apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, watching the sunset paint the desert mountains gold and crimson. I'd lost everything. The company, the money, the respect, the family. But for the first time in decades, I slept through the night without nightmares. My phone rang, an unknown number with a Seattle area code. Hello? Dad? Allie's voice was older, more mature, but still unmistakably my daughter. It's me. I closed my eyes, feeling tears I hadn't shed in years. Hi, sweetheart. I had a baby, a little girl. We named her Sarah. Congratulations. How are you feeling? Tired, happy, confused. A pause. I've been thinking about you. About us. About what happened. Allie, I know you can't forgive me. I'm not calling to forgive you, Dad. I'm calling because my daughter deserves to know her grandfather, even if he's a deeply flawed man who made terrible choices. Hope bloomed in my chest for the first time in years. Are you sure? No, but I'm willing to try if you are. I'd like that very much. There are conditions. You can never lie to me again about anything. You can never manipulate or scheme or try to control any situation involving my family. And if you ever hurt my daughter the way you hurt Mom, I'll disappear forever. I understand. Do you? Because this isn't about forgiveness, Dad. This is about redemption. And redemption requires more than just saying you're sorry. I looked out at the desert, at the vast expanse of nothing that had become my world. What does it require? It requires becoming someone worth forgiving. 6 months later, I held my granddaughter for the first time in Allie's living room in Seattle. Sarah was perfect. Tiny fingers, bright eyes, a smile that reminded me of Allie at that age. For a moment, all the pain and regret faded away, replaced by pure, uncomplicated love. She's beautiful, I whispered, afraid to speak too loudly. She looks like you, Allie said, settling beside me on the couch. Same stubborn chin. God help her. Allie laughed, the first genuine laughter I'd heard from her in years. Marcus thinks she's going to be trouble. I looked at my daughter, successful, married, a mother now, and felt a pride untainted by ambition or manipulation. She'd built a good life despite everything I'd put her through. Allie, I need you to know something. What? Everything I did, the manipulation, the scheming, the destruction, none of it was worth losing you. If I could go back and choose differently, I would. Would you really? Even knowing you'd lose the company? I thought about it seriously. weighing the question she deserved an honest answer to. Yes, I'd choose you over everything else, even over beating Mom, especially over beating your mother. Allie nodded slowly, studying my face for signs of deception. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her. Okay, she said simply. That's a start. As I held my granddaughter and watched my daughter build a fire in the fireplace, I realized something that would have shocked the man I used to be. I was happy. Not successful, not powerful, not feared or respected, just happy. It had taken losing everything to find the one thing that actually mattered. Outside, Seattle rain drummed against the windows like applause. Inside, 3 generations of my family sat together in comfortable silence. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. The empire I'd built was gone. The revenge I'd orchestrated had consumed everyone it touched, including me. But here, in this small living room with my daughter and granddaughter, I'd found something more valuable than any corporate throne, a chance to be the man I should have been all along. Sarah gurgled and reached for my face with her tiny hand. I caught her fingers in mine and made a silent promise. I would never let ambition or pride or the hunger for control poison this relationship the way it had poisoned everything else in my life. Some victories are worth any price. Others cost more than you can ever repay. Learning the difference had taken me 53 years and the destruction of everyone I'd claimed to love. But holding my granddaughter in my arms, watching my daughter smile without fear or calculation, I finally understood what winning actually meant.